The forest was silent, a silence sharp as glass. Jason, the newly turned vampire, felt the night's chill seep into his bones, even beneath his pale skin. He was hidden, watching Linda, the beautiful Native American woman, her eyes sparkling under the full moon. But something was wrong. A thunderous roar shattered the peace, and a pack of wild wolves emerged from the shadows, their red eyes fixed on Linda. Was she in danger? And what would happen if Jason, the vampire, had to choose between his oath of loyalty and the love he felt for her? The forest whispered secrets on that dark night. The tall, imposing trees seemed like silent sentinels, guarding the mystery hidden in their shadows. Jason, the young vampire, still felt strange in his new skin, the cold, pale skin that contrasted with the burning heat of his heart. He loved Linda, the Native American woman with hair as black as night and eyes as deep as the starry sky. She was the only light in his new, shadowed existence. But the full moon, usually so beautiful, brought with it a foreboding of danger. A deep, menacing roar echoed through the forest, breaking the silence like thunder. From the shadows emerged large wolves, their red eyes gleaming like embers, their sharp teeth like glistening knives. There were many, many wolves surrounding Linda in a clearing, completely unprotected. Jason felt his blood run cold. He, who had once been an ordinary man, was now a vampire, a servant of the fearsome master, Vladimir. But how could he stand there, watching the danger that threatened Linda? His heart pounded, a mixture of fear and an uncontrollable desire to protect her. It was a terrible conflict, an internal battle between his duty and his love. The oath of loyalty to Vladimir weighed on him like an anchor, but the image of Linda in danger pulled him with greater force. Linda, despite the visible fear in her eyes, was calm. Something in her posture, something in her determination, suggested that she was no mere victim. She was a descendant of a long line of warriors and healers, and her ancestors, the protectors of the forest, seemed to be present in some way, comforting her. She closed her eyes for a moment, concentrating, her lips moving in silent prayer or an ancient invocation. Suddenly, something fantastic happened. An invisible energy emanated from Linda, a powerful, ancient force. The light of the full moon reflected on her skin, which began to glow with a golden aura. The wolves who were about to attack her recoiled a few steps, their howls changing from menacing to hesitant, as if they had sensed a greater power, an ancestral force, something that intimidated them. The forest itself seemed to react to the energy emanating from Linda, the trees seeming to bow in reverence to her power. Jason watched everything in bewilderment. He had never witnessed anything like it. Linda's ancestral powers were real, far stronger than he could have imagined. It was an ancient power, connected to nature, to the forest itself, a power that could even challenge vampires. But the wolves' hesitation was brief. The pack leader, a huge wolf with a scar on its snout, let out a deep growl and lunged at Linda, breaking the magical spell. The other wolves followed, roaring, their eyes full of rage and hunger. Jason could hesitate no longer. He knew that if he wanted to save Linda, he would have to act quickly. But acting meant defying his master, Vladimir, and that could have terrible consequences. The battle between his heart and his duty now turned into a physical struggle to save the woman he loved. At that moment, a shadowy figure emerged from the shadows of the forest. A hooded man, silent and imposing, with a piercing gaze that chilled Jason to the bone. Who was this mysterious man? And what role would he play on this night of danger, love, and battle? The fate of Linda, and perhaps even Jason's, was about to be sealed. The battle for survival had only just begun, and the forest, a silent witness, prepared for an epic confrontation between love and loyalty, nature and the supernatural, light and shadows. The forest, once a scene of serene beauty, was now a stage of terror. The wolves, hungry and furious, attacked Linda, their sharp teeth gleaming in the moonlight. Linda, despite the ancestral power she had awakened, was still a young woman, and the pack's fury was overwhelming. She defended herself with incredible agility and dexterity, dodging claws and teeth with quick, precise movements. But the wolves were numerous, relentless. Every growl, every scratch echoed in the night, amplifying the fear that chilled Jason's blood. He knew he had to intervene, that he couldn't stand by and watch that massacre. But the shadow of Vladimir, his master, loomed over him, a heavy weight on his conscience. Disobedience would bring unimaginable consequences, perhaps death or something worse, a hellish punishment within the dark world of vampires. He felt torn, crushed by guilt and love. Linda was his light, but his duty to Vladimir was a darkness that held him captive. Then, as a huge wolf lunged at Linda, about to pierce her body with its claws, Jason acted. With a cry, which sounded more like a roar, he threw himself upon the pack, his body moving with supernatural speed. His teeth sharpened, his claws lengthened, and the vampire's strength exploded in a whirlwind of fury. He fought with an innate dexterity, typical of his new nature, but with the strength and determination of a man in love defending the woman he loved. The fight was violent, a whirlwind of claws, teeth, and blood. Jason faced the wolves with the ferocity of a wild animal, protecting Linda with his body, deflecting attacks, biting with deadly precision. Blood flowed from his wounds, mixing with the mud and earth of the forest, but he felt no pain, not while Linda was safe. With each wolf that fell, defeated by his supernatural strength, Jason felt stronger, more confident, fueled by the adrenaline of battle and driven by the love that connected him to Linda. But the wolves were many, and the fight was exhausting. Jason, despite his supernatural strength, was a newly turned vampire, and his resistance was not yet complete. He felt his strength leaving him with each passing moment, exhaustion taking over his body. Linda, seeing his situation, concentrated again, closing her eyes and invoking the ancestral power she had awakened. A wave of emerald green energy emanated from her, hitting the remaining wolves, paralyzing them for a moment. It was in that brief moment that the hooded figure who had watched the fight in silence approached. He was tall, imposing, enveloped in a mysterious aura. The hood hid his face, but his eyes, which gleamed in the moonlight, were deep, penetrating. With a fluid and precise movement, he threw a kind of greenish powder over the remaining wolves, who collapsed in convulsions, turning to stone. Silence returned to the forest, broken only by the groans of agony of the petrified wolves. Linda watched the scene, stunned, unable to understand what had happened. Jason, exhausted but unharmed, approached her, feeling overwhelmed by a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and love. The hooded man remained silent, watching them, an enigma amidst the mystery of the forest. Who was he? What was his role? The search for love in a bloody battle had ended, or had it only just begun? The mystery of the hooded man and the danger he represented hung in the air, carrying the promise of new challenges and a sinister threat to the future of Jason and Linda's relationship. The forest was silent, a heavy silence that contrasted with the recent storm of claws and roars. Jason, his body covered in scratches and blood, felt the weight of exhaustion, but the relief of having protected Linda kept him on his feet. Linda, pale and trembling, was still breathing, her eyes fixed on the petrified wolves. The ancestral energy, which had enveloped her in a golden aura, was slowly fading, leaving only the soft glow of the moon on her face. She leaned on Jason, and he felt the fragility of her body against his. An overwhelming feeling of love and protection washed over him, stronger than the exhaustion. Suddenly, a shadow moved behind them. It was the hooded man, still shrouded in mystery. He didn't say a word, but his eyes, like two bright points in the darkness, conveyed a cold and strange energy. He approached slowly, like a snake approaching its prey. Jason instinctively placed himself in front of Linda, ready to fight again, even without strength. Silence fell once more, a silence more frightening than any roar. Jason watched the hooded man with apprehension. This was a new danger, a mystery to be unraveled. It was a new threat, perhaps even greater than the pack of wolves. That slender, silent man radiated a mysterious power, as overwhelming as Linda's ancestral power. It was a different power, however, a cold, calculating, and menacing power. It was the kind of power that froze the blood in your veins, that stole your breath. The hooded man raised a hand, and Jason expected an attack, a demonstration of force. But nothing happened. Instead, the man lowered his hand, and a peculiar gleam escaped from his long, dark sleeves, revealing long, thin objects made of dark, worked wood. They were daggers, intricate and ancient, that seemed to pulse with a subtle, dark energy. Linda, still in shock, moved hesitantly. Jason held her, his touch light but firm. He wanted to protect her at all costs. The hooded man didn't take his eyes off them, his gaze fixed, penetrating. It was as if he could see through their souls, deciphering their fears and their most hidden secrets. "You two," the hooded man's voice broke the silence, hoarse and deep, like the murmur of the wind among the ancient trees. It was a voice that carried the weight of centuries, a voice that echoed with wars and tragedies, magic and mysticism. His voice wasn't threatening, but penetrating, echoing through the silence like the sound of a symphony of shadows and mystery, are in the midst of something far greater than yourselves. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. The palpable danger, the menacing aura that enveloped him, conveyed his meaning. The simple act of being there, near Jason and Linda, represented a threat. The hooded man was neither ally nor declared enemy. He was something more, a messenger of something greater, someone who watched, waited, anticipated the unfolding of events. The forest slowly returned to life, the nocturnal sounds returning softly. But the silence between the three characters, Jason, Linda, and the hooded man, remained heavy, charged with tension. The confrontation hadn't ended. It was just a new beginning, a new threat in a more complex plot, a new stage in the saga of love and survival of the immortal vampire and the warrior Native American woman. The battle for survival had ended, but a new battle, a battle for their future, for their union, a battle against the shadow that loomed over them, was about to begin. And at the center of this new battle were Jason and Linda, their hearts united by love, fighting to survive the unknown, the mysterious power of the hooded man, and the dark forces that threatened their destiny. Their love now needed to be stronger than the supernatural, stronger than the magic and mystery of the night. The forest, once the scene of a bloody battle, now breathed a tense silence. Jason, the newly turned vampire, embraced Linda, their bodies trembling, not only from the night's chill, but from the shock of the fight and the uncertainty of the future. Blood flowed from his wounds, mixing with Linda's tears, who, despite the ancestral power she had demonstrated, was exhausted and vulnerable. The wolves, petrified, looked like stone statues under the pale moonlight. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, imposing and silent. It was a hooded man, his face obscured by the dark folds of the fabric, but his eyes shone with an intensity that froze the blood in Jason's veins. He didn't introduce himself, didn't make threats, just watched, his penetrating gaze lingering on the couple. There was something supernatural about that figure, something ancient and mysterious, something that transcended the power of the wolves and even the strength of the vampires. The hooded man moved slowly, his steps as silent as the fall of a feather, and extended a hand, revealing ancient, worked daggers, made of a dark wood that seemed to pulse with a strange and frightening energy. They were powerful weapons, emanating an aura of supernatural power, unlike anything Jason had ever seen. They weren't ordinary weapons, and he felt a chill run down his spine as he recognized the ominous aura emanating from them. In a hoarse and deep voice, like the whisper of an ancestral wind, he broke the silence. "You are involved in something much bigger than you imagine." His penetrating eyes scanned Linda and Jason, as if reading their thoughts, their fears, their desires. It wasn't a direct threat, but a warning, a subtle revelation of an imminent danger that would loom over their newly blossoming relationship, a danger beyond the capacity of wolves and even vampires. And then, the hooded man made a sudden gesture. He threw one of the daggers towards Jason, who instinctively deflected it, but the weapon stopped suspended in the air, hovering a few inches from his face. It was as if it were held by an invisible thread. The hooded man pointed to the dagger and said, "This dagger. It carries an ancient power, a power that can destroy what you have, but it can also protect you if you know how to use it." A shiver ran down Jason's spine. It wasn't just a fight between humans, wolves, and vampires. It was a battle for an ancestral power, much older and more dangerous than any creature in the forest. And they, Jason and Linda, were at the center of a fight that threatened everything they had achieved. The hooded man disappeared as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving behind a dark enigma and the daggers hovering in the air. The dagger began to glow with increasing intensity, casting a light on Linda's face as she held the other dagger. Linda held the other dagger and felt a peculiar energy running through her veins. A connection to the supernatural world, as strong as the connection to her own ancestral power. Jason looked at her, his eyes full of fear and admiration. They didn't know what the daggers represented, what mysterious power they contained, but they knew that the danger, which seemed to be over, had in fact only just begun. The hooded man, the fight for survival, the battle for love, everything was connected to this ancient and mysterious power. And now, in the face of the increasing luminosity of the daggers, a new mystery and a new threat emerged in the darkness of the forest, leaving them immersed in the uncertainty of the future and trapped in an even more dangerous and intriguing plot. The search for love now was also a search for survival against an unknown enemy, an enemy that might be closer than they imagined. What is the secret of the daggers? What did the hooded man really want? And what did the future hold for Jason and Linda in the face of this new and mysterious danger?